And good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Get Busy with Kit and Jim. All I can say is, wow, you guys are in for a treat. Today we have with us Jeb Blount. I hope I pronounced that right, Jeb. And our
Blunt. It's Blunt.
Blunt, okay, sorry, Jeb Blount, and our amazing dream team here. The only person we're missing this morning is Greg, but he actually has work to do, and Carolyn assured us that it really is true work that he's doing. So we'll miss you, Greg. But welcome to the Dream Team, and welcome to Get Busy, Jeb. How's it
Thank you.
going this morning?
It's going awesome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, we are so stoked to have you on the show today, let me tell you. Um, okay, so hey, Jeb, let's get started right away. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us maybe a little bit about where you grew up and what were some of your influences in your life as you were growing up?
I appreciate you asking the question. I actually grew up on a farm in a little town called Harlem, Georgia, and I had a pretty normal childhood. I had great parents. We had pigs and horses and cows and chickens, and we played on a red dirt road just like a little redneck in Georgia would, and picked plums during the summertime, and we worked hard. One of the things that I definitely took away was that we had chores to do every single day. We had to wake up in the morning and milk something or feed something, and we had to build fences, and we had to take care of things. My mother, when I was a kid, it was from a work standpoint, we used to keep she would keep us occupied by sending us out in the garden with a mason jar, and we would pick bugs off all the plants because she was into organic gardening at the time. But I really think she was into torture and keeping her kids occupied. We had when I was growing up, we had this wood stove, and because my dad was a lawyer, my mother was a nurse, so it wasn't like we were living an austere lifestyle because we didn't have any money. We were living an austere lifestyle because that was the lifestyle that they chose. But we had this wood stove in the middle of our kitchen, and that was what we would use for heat. And so we had this wood box that my dad built, and I would have to every afternoon after school fill the thing up with wood. And so I got really good at it. I got a system down so that I could come in, fill it up, and then get to Gilligan's Island on TV really, really quick. So my dad, as sadistic as he is, decided that I was getting it done too quickly, so he made it bigger and burnt more wood so that I'd be occupied longer in the afternoons. But the farm stuff was where I got my first sales gig. I started a dead animal funeral business, and I would go around to all the other farms. Now, this was not like walking, down a neighborhood where you would walk door to door. You'd be walking a mile down the road to go knock on a door. So this was extreme cold calling. But everybody had a farm where something died. I mean, some animal was going to get killed. It was going to die. And typically when something died, dogs would get it and drag it under a trailer or somebody's house or what have you, and it would stink. And so nobody wants to go get a dead animal. So I walked around, knocked on doors, and said, "I'm your dead animal guy." And I had a pretty thriving business of going and climbing into people's houses and getting stuff. And my guarantee was when I buried it, it wouldn't resurface at some point in the future. So that's what I did. I started selling that, and then in high school, I joined the yearbook team and blew the doors off all the records for yearbook ads. And for me, at that point, I knew that the rest of my life I was going to spend selling or teaching people how to sell because it was just what I loved to do.
Wow, that's awesome. That's amazing. So so now we understand what inspired you to get into sales. You've really upped your game by tying social media into the equation. So can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Well, I worked in corporate America for 20 years. I was a head of sales for a $13 billion company before I jumped in and started my own business. So I own a company called salesgravy.com. We're the most visited sales website on the planet. And social media, when we started the company in 2006, social media was just beginning to emerge. I mean, we were like right at the beginning of the smartphone, right at the beginning of social media, and we dipped our toe in early. The only thing that I truly regret is not starting a group on LinkedIn a little earlier. I mean, we have almost 30,000 people in our group on LinkedIn, but we probably would have double of that if we had gotten in a little bit early. But I found that social media was a great way to build a following, get information out, get people to interact with me personally, and it wasn't like a place where we decided, oh, now we're going to do social media. It was evolution. It was just a natural way that you connect with people, and it made life easier because we could touch so many more people more often in different ways. And what we found is that social media is a part of a bigger toolkit. So we have about, if you take a look at our database, we have about 600,000 people, salespeople in our database, and that includes 50,000 or so sales leaders and we've got, I think, another 30,000 people in HR because we do a lot of online employment sales. And we've got all these people in our database. Well, some of them just like to come to our website when they're ready. Some people use our mobile apps. We have a really rockin' mobile app. Some people like to touch us on social media. Some people get our newsletter. Some people listen to our podcasts. Some people read our books. Some people see me on different websites where I contribute. So all of the above allow us to interact and keep our audience engaged in the way that they want to be engaged. So rather than saying, one place, we touch people everywhere. And here's evidence to that. I was at a trade show just recently where my company had a booth, and it was an HR trade show because we do a lot of work in employment. And the person next to me was a vice president of sales for a company and said, "Oh, sales gravy. I get sales gravy." And I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, I get your newsletter every single week." But this person had never been to my website, never seen us on social media, never read a book, never done any of those things, but somebody told her about that. I've got other people that the only place that they know me is on Twitter or on Google Plus or on LinkedIn. So I don't really care where I touch people as long as the opportunity is there. And social media, I'm telling you, it allows us to amplify our message in ways that if you just go back 10 years would have cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do.
Right. Hey, Jeb, I'm going to throw this open to the panel. So I'll start with you, Carolyn. Do you have any questions for Jeb?
Oh yeah, tons. Well, yeah, that's the real problem here. I was already peppering him with some questions in the green room, and I think maybe that's perhaps a good place to start with asking him to talk a little bit to his sales philosophy that he writes about and speaks about and shares with people through social media.
Well, my philosophy on sales is simple. I believe that I think that to be great in sales, it's more about control over yourself than it is trying to control situations, customers, the environment, products, prices, those type of things. I mean, I'm not saying that those things aren't important, but it truly is about your own self-mastery. And self-mastery begins with your ability to control your own emotions and then therefore be able to manage the emotions in others, and that typically others are going to be your buyers, gatekeepers, etc. And there's a huge impact that this what would basically would be called EQ or emotional intelligence has on sales. And so basically my philosophy is teaching salespeople how to step into their buyer's shoes, see things from the buyer's perspective, and understand that even though there's a sales process, and I teach a sales process, but as we were talking earlier, I think you can find a dozen sales processes, find the one that works best for you, your company, build it, whatever the case may be. But the buyer's process is going to be pretty much the same no matter where you are. And buyers are asking 5 questions. Now, these 5 questions can be both conscious questions that they're asking outwardly, or they can be subconscious questions that are happening at a place where they're not aware of it, but it's causing them to make decisions or to think a particular way. And those 5 questions are simple. Do I like you? The first thing that they want to know is, do I like you? Now, just because someone likes you does not mean they're going to do business with you. However, if they don't like you, you have no chance in hell. Number 2 is they want to know, are you listening to me? Number 1 complaint that buyers have about salespeople is that salespeople don't listen. You see, most salespeople are spending their time pitching. And what most salespeople don't understand is that buyers would rather go spend an afternoon in a dental chair getting a root canal than spend 15 minutes with a salesperson that's pitching them. The buyer wants to know, do you make me feel important? It is the one insatiable human need, the need to feel important. And when buyers feel important, they're willing to let their walls down, answer your questions, and tell you what the real problems are. What a lot of salespeople miss because they're pitching all the time is that buyers have a script, and it's a script that we taught them. The script is, well, how much does it cost, or I'm not happy right now, or I'm not ready to do anything, or whatever the case may be. But a lot of salespeople walk out of meetings with buyers and say, I got some information, but it was the same information the buyer gave all of the competitors that came in, so you just sound like everybody else. Buyers want to know, do you get me and my problems? And this is important because buying is personal, even at the business-to-business level where you think you're selling something to the buyer that is impersonal or illogical. Buyers make decisions on emotion, not logic, and they always have and they always will. So if people are making decisions on emotion rather than logic, they have to know that you get them as individuals, and you all know what that feels like when someone gets you, when they really understand you, and do you get their problems? And finally, the one thing that buyers definitely have to know is, do I trust and believe you? Because it's not just your company, and a lot of your audience is small businesses. If you work for a really big business, they probably trust the brand, but they also have to trust the person that's selling the brand. If you work for a small business and you don't have a brand, they have to trust both your business and they have to trust you. And if buyers don't trust you, they are not going to do business with you. And trust emanates from all of these other checkpoints that you're making. But when you can answer the question, do I like you? Do you listen to me? Do you make me feel important? Do you get me in my problems? And do I trust and believe you? You have such a competitive advantage. I mean, you look different than everyone else. And that differentiation almost guarantees that you are going to get the business and close the deal.
Oh man, I love that too. In large part, not only because it makes, it kind of exemplifies what I want to do as a salesperson for my own company, but also because of all the millions of emails and calls that I get, it seems like on a yearly basis from people who have no idea how to make a buyer feel important. Current example, I got a call this morning from a company out in Texas that wanted to sell me health insurance. Person on the phone calls and I pick up and I say hello. They say, is this the owner? Don't even ask my name. Don't even know who I am, apparently. They say, is this the owner? I say, yeah. And they ask, how much do you pay for your health insurance? And I say, time out. I'm not giving you that information because you haven't even asked my name. I don't know your name. I don't even really know what company you're with or why I should buy from you. Take me off your call list. Goodbye. And that was basically how the conversation went. And that's a classic example, unfortunately.
And it didn't make you feel important. It made you feel like you were just a number. I'm always amazed because, we talked about social media, that people will ping me on social media, send me an email or what have you. I got one the other day ago from a young man who was emphatically pitching me on having his company come in and provide sales training for my company, Sales Gravy. And I mean, it was on LinkedIn.
That's a great one. I love that.
My profile. I mean, if you looked at my profile before you sent me the email, you would know that that's probably not something I'm going to buy from you because that's what I do for a living.
Oh, that's too good. Wow. Yeah, a little research goes a long way, right?
Yeah, even just looking at your profile might be helpful. Hey, Kit, I know you had an amazing question that we talked about in the green room for Jeb, so I'd like to open it up to you and have you ask that question of Jeb, please.
Yes. So my question was, do you have a certain personality type that, that you've seen in sales that kind of like a commonality between successful sales professionals? Do you have a certain personality type? Do you have to be an introvert or extrovert? What have you seen? That was my question.
And I love that question. It's one of my favorite questions, and that is people who are searching for the sales DNA. Now, there are some basics that you have to have in order to really thrive in sales. I mean, basics like drive. If you're not able to get up every single day and drive yourself to work hard and achieve goals, you're going to have a really hard time in sales. And for that matter, you're going to have a really hard time in most endeavors. I mean, that's something that entrepreneurs and small business people tend to have in spades is drive. You have to be competitive. I mean, you have to be willing to step up and when you get knocked down, get back up again. You have to, you have to have that will that nobody's going to out hustle you, that your competitors aren't going to beat you, and you have to be optimistic. I mean, if you are walking around pessimistic and thinking that people won't buy from you, or your product stinks, or the market stinks, or what have you, it's going to be really hard to convince other people to buy from you. If you think about sales in this perspective, I said people buy on emotion, which is true. Then, if that is true, then sales is in a lot of ways simply the transference of emotion from you to the buyer, the transference of enthusiasm for what you're selling. But aside of those three things, the question is always: do introverts or extroverts make better salespeople? And is there a certain personality type that matters? And the answer is really no. So I asked you guys a question earlier. What is the most insatiable human need? What is that?
The need to feel important.
Okay, you guys were paying attention in the green room. The need to feel important, right? So what the most insatiable need is to feel important, the easiest, fastest way to make another human being feel important is to just listen to them. I mean, if you think about it, like you go and you listen to someone, they love you for it. They dig you for it. I was on an airplane not too long ago flying from Chicago down to Scottsdale, Arizona. I was given a keynote speech at a big heavy machinery convention, and on the plane there was this young lady, and I ended up having a conversation with her. The conversation for her was it was just a run-on sentence that lasted for 3 hours, but I listened. And she talked and talked and talked and talked, and I practice listening everywhere because it's such a tough skill for me. I'm an extrovert to get, so I practice it everywhere. Back of cabs, with people I don't know, strangers, you name it. I ask questions, shut up, and listen to them. So after I got off the airplane and said goodbye to the lady, I gave her my card. She actually wrote me a 4-page letter telling me how that one conversation changed her life. Oh, by the way, I bought books for all my friends. And I was in Dubai. I was sitting in the back of a taxi cab asking questions of the taxi driver and asking about his family and what he was doing. We got out of the cab. He was so overwhelmed that someone had just listened to him that he actually gave me a hug. As a Pakistani, and he gave me a hug and carried my bags to the front of the airport and said, "You're not like all those other people." Listening is so powerful because listening makes people feel important. And the reality is that people who are natural introverts, they're natural listeners. They attract people to them. And because you're able to listen, what happens when you're listening, people begin to talk and they begin to self-reveal. And when they self-reveal, they give you all the information that you need to close them. So, in my opinion, introverts who have the ability to drive, to keep knocking on doors, are probably the best salespeople because they've got that natural ability. However, listening skills, just like emotional intelligence, can be taught, and they can be learned, and it can be honed, and you can become aware of your need to feel important, which usually is what's getting in the way of listening to other people. Now, there's one more thing that I wanted to bring out and around this concept of listening, and this was a study that was done at Harvard. It was actually written up in the Wall Street Journal, I'm thinking like last fall or last spring. And this group at Harvard, and there's a brand new book out called Contagious. Awesome book for your viewers. And this study is also cited in that book. But they did the study, and basically they wanted to find out what talking does for someone. And what they found out is when you ask someone an easy question and they begin talking, blood rushes to the pleasure centers of the brain. They did this on an MRI. And then as people continue to talk, as they continue to reveal and give you more and more information, those pleasure centers, sex and food and thrill rides and all the things that happen, love, all the things that you associate with pleasure in your life, those pleasure centers are stimulated when you self-reveal. So what happens is that people begin to tell you more and more and more information. They actually feel better and better and better on the inside, which translates to them feeling better and better and better about you. That translates into, do you get me in my problems? Do I trust and believe you? Listening is so powerful, and most sales processes are teaching salespeople how to pitch versus listening. And if you dial it down into one small piece of advice, In sales, life is really simple. A question you ask is more important than anything that you will ever say.
Wow, you know what? That is super powerful. Hey, I want to throw this over to Dennis. Dennis, I can't thank you enough for bringing Jeb onto the show. Great find, and he's already brought enough nuggets to the table that we could chew on that for probably a month, and still not be completely satiated. But Dennis, I just want to thank you for bringing Jeb on. Also, I want to give you so much kudos for putting together these new lower thirds for us. They are awesome and amazing, and thank you so much. Dennis, take it away. I know Jeb is a friend of yours, so I know you probably have some great questions for him, so take it away. Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah. So is my mic working okay? We were having trouble in the green room. We good?
We're good.
More or less? Okay.
Yep.
So, yeah, I've known Jeb since summer of 2007. I was listening to his podcast while I was skateboarding because, you got to keep learning while you're playing, right? And he was talking about the importance of reading in order to grow and develop. Jeb, you probably remember this, but during it, he broke down how if you read for 30 minutes a day, based on average reading, you'd be able to read X number of books a year. I think it was like 8 or 10 books a year, if I remember right, Jeb. And I have not listened to that.
Yeah,
so
21 books, 15 minutes.
21 books. Okay, it was even more than I thought. It was a lot. It's amazing that I can remember a podcast from 2007 at all, right? Anyway, at the end of it, he says, I've got a list of my top 10 favorite books. Here's my email if you want this list. And I wanted the list. I had never written to somebody I didn't know in my life. And so I wrote an email right there at the skateboard park on my phone. And within about 20 minutes, he had written back. And now the thing was, I kind of, told him what I thought about him and why I thought his stuff was so great, because I'm like, I'm asking for something. I'm going to give something back, right? And it just kind of, I don't know, everything that Jeb teaches has resonated with me. A lot of people don't realize I was in full-time sales from 1988 until about 2011 when I moved into some sales and online marketing. And so that was my life, that was my business, but everything he says so resonated with me, especially the approach of building relationships first, and the approach Jeb has of not teaching you closing techniques. He's so emphatic about that. And, I got so mid-2000s sales training was just about enough to make you want to hang yourself. It was all about, I've got this secret sauce, here's my closing technique. And if you broke any of it down, I mean, almost all of it, Jeb, I think you'd agree, was just manipulation at its finest, which is the antithesis of everything that Jeb teaches. And from there, we just built this weird online relationship, literally the first one I ever had. I got to hurl with him in 2011. Jeb, a hurl is a hangout in real life. It's a Google Plus term. So I'm talking about the time we were together in Ohio. And there's a very funny video, actually, of Jeb and I. I'll post that in the notes. We did a video at that time. I got thrown in the back of his SUV. But Jeb, really, I mean, this guy is the real deal. The stuff that he's saying, I got to actually sit in on a sales process with him. I typed this in the notes. He lives everything he's teaching. I go check out his books, subscribe to his podcast, and especially give him a whole bunch of love here on Google Plus, because I'm in the process of trying to convert him. So,
hey, Dennis, do you have a question?
for Jeb,
Yeah.
why do you do what you do?
I don't know how to do anything else. It's a compelling force in my life. I try not to do it sometimes, but I can't help it. Um, I I I like teaching people, whether it's I think I've been to Russia 5 times this year teaching leadership skills or teaching, sales skills or selling more stuff. It's, my wife asks me all the time, why don't you quit selling stuff we can't handle anymore? And if there's a deal out there, I'm going to go get it. It's just in my nature. I got to close. That's a good question. I just have to. I can't stop.
Yeah, it's like it's in your DNA, right?
Either that or it's like sales crack or something. I don't know.
Hey, Kristen, I want to welcome you to the panel.
Thanks.
And do you have a question for Jeb?
Oh gosh, I've just been thinking, I've been soaking everything in. This is really good stuff. Yeah, it seems like you're just applying everything that is, I don't know, like interpersonal relationships, and applying to business, which is just, it makes sense. It's relationship, right? I guess my question would be, do you ever see yourself retiring?
Oh, I
Or
love that
do you
question.
think that this will just be forever thing?
Never, ever, ever gonna retire. Never. Saw this commercial. I was 2 weekends ago. I was in Reading, Pennsylvania. I was working on a project for a client, and it just didn't make sense to fly back to Augusta and then fly back to Reading, so I stayed over. And I was working on my new book, so I was in my hotel writing, and I was watching a golf tournament, and this commercial came on, and it was this commercial from this financial services company selling retirement products, and the screen flipped over to these happy 60-somethings, that were all smiling and everything, and the announcer in this really soothing voice says, retirement, the time for finally getting to do all of the things that you love. And I remember I just looked up and my mouth dropped open. If I had a brick, I'd have thrown it through the TV. I'd done an Elvis on it, and just shot the TV. Man, you got to be kidding me. This is what the commercial's telling you. You've got to work for 45 years doing something that you hate so that you can retire and do something that you love. My favorite documentary on PBS is this documentary that follows these people that are in their 90s and some of them are in their hundreds. And what's most impressive about this documentary is that you take a look at these people, they don't look their age. They're vibrant, alive, hardworking people. They're not these old people that you would expect to see in wheelchairs and they can't hear and they're feeble. I mean, these people, they don't even look their age at all. And so when you look at the documentary, the whole point of the documentary was to follow these people and figure out what was the common DNA trait or genetic trait that allowed them to live these incredibly fulfilled lives in their old age. And the researchers couldn't find anything that they had in common except for one thing. Not a single one of them was retired. Every one of them was working really, really hard, doing a job that they really liked. So, my takeaway from that is I'm never retiring. The secret to a fulfilled, happy life is to work your tail off doing something that you love forever, forever. And that's my opinion. That's me. It may sound hokey to the person that wants to go, buy a house and die on a golf course, but the day that I die, I'll still be working. And that's how I'm going to operate.
Right. And you know what? That's awesome, Jeb, because really it's about doing what you love. And when you do what you love, it's not really even work, right?
It's not. It's like going on vacation every day.
Hey, we have a comment. We have a comment from one of our audience members, our esteemed audience. We call them the Dream Viewers. So Ken Manassi Sr. says, is there a difference from closing in Russia than in the U.S.? And I want to piggyback on that and say, is there a difference in the way that you do business and the way that you sell in different cultures?
There are definitely different cultural norms for how you interact with people. most of it has to do, or and wraps itself around respect. Now, if we were to take Russia, and all you have to do is just look at at the Russian culture, look at where they came from, look at what happened in 1920 all the way through to today. You can, if you study the history even past, you'll find that Russians are a lot like people from Missouri. They're all from the Show Me state. So building trust, making sure that people can see the case for why you're doing something is extremely important there. So do I trust and believe you in that 5-layer buying process paradigm? That's going to be a big deal in Russia. Do I trust and believe you? So you're going to have to focus your time and attention on that. And in other societies, it's respect. So do you get me in my problem is going to be a bigger deal. In other words, do you respect me? I'm from the South. I'm from the Deep South. In the Deep South, we're a lot like in a lot of ways, the culture in the South is a lot like the culture in Japan. And I've done some really big deals with Japan, some really, really big deals. And I get along very, very well in Japan because it's all about respect. It's all about how you go through the ritual of demonstrating respect. And in the South, I know that I've done deals where I've gone through the ritual of how you demonstrate respect in the South, and I've walked out with deals where I never even talked about business. The trust came from that. Do you get me in my problems? So wherever you're selling, it's important that you do understand those cultural norms. But I can tell you two things that are going to be the same no matter where you go, or three things really. Smiling. No matter where you go, the human smile is universal. So the fastest, easiest way to be likable, do I like you, is to smile. The other thing that is universal is, do you listen to me? There's no place on earth that people don't value people who listen to them. Nowhere. And do you make me feel important? There is a universal human need to feel important. Now, that need is muted, for example, in some Asian companies or countries because of a culture of humility. However, there are ways to make people feel important, i.e., respect, that have a massive impact on whether or not they're going to take time to answer your questions and allow you to get below the surface. The other thing I think that this will be my last comment on this is that a lot of times Americans we have this need for instant gratification, and we do so in the sales process. So we go to the sales process, we ask you for something, we want you to give it to you right now. We expect to walk systematically through a sales process and get to a close. And in some countries, that process may take a little bit longer because there's a courtship that's expected in any type of deal. That's going to be dependent on the product you're selling, on the service you're selling, on where you fit in in that organization and what your hierarchy is in terms of where you fit into your own company. So you just want to be aware of all those cultural norms and then pay attention to the universal needs that humans have emotionally and focus on those. I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
Totally. I could sit here and listen to you just literally all day long. I have one more question, and then Kit, I'll let you jump in.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. So one quick question. Well, actually, it might be not so quick, but I want to explore emotional. You've touched on a couple of times emotional intelligence. I want you to maybe define that a little bit and talk about why that's so important in. Number one, in building relationships, but also in sales and conducting business in general.
Okay. Well, emotional intelligence is simply intrapersonal skills, so your ability to manage your own emotions, and interpersonal skills, your ability to manage the emotions in others. It's being self-aware, which is really the root of emotional intelligence, is that self-awareness of who I am, how I operate, and being able to be intuitive enough to be aware of other people's emotions and manage those emotions based on the situation. Emotional intelligence is Daniel Goleman really is I wouldn't call him the father of emotional intelligence, but his book Emotional Intelligence really was the breakthrough book that brought emotional intelligence to the forefront in business as we know it today. And And so in sales, if you think about it, you know, how important is your ability to manage the emotions in others and to manage yourself? It is absolutely critical to sales success, absolutely critical. And that buying process we talk about, that is managing the buyer's emotions and managing your own. One example was, if the most insatiable human need is to feel important, you have to be able to turn off your need to feel important and to make other people feel important. And that is an emotional intelligence trait. Now, here's the thing. Let's just say I'm a business owner, or I'm a vice president of sales, and I have a group of salespeople. You have to recognize that you cannot make your people smarter. We all have an IQ. We all have what's in our head. That's DNA. IQ does not change from the time that you were born to the time that you die. Your IQ will be the same. So you can't get any smarter. Now, can you add knowledge to your IQ? Absolutely. You can go to school, you can learn more, and what knowledge allows you to do is to apply your intelligence in business situations or life situations. In other words, knowledge makes IQ relevant. But EQ, right, your emotional intelligence, that is the one thing that studies have shown again and again that you can hone, that you can build. Now, for most of us, it's a lifelong process of honing and building our emotional intelligence, and as we grow older, we tend to gain a higher level of EQ, but it's something that you can teach. It's something that you can grow. It's just like my example of the cabbie in Dubai who hugged me. That ability to stop and listen to that person and make them feel important, even though that person had no direct connection to me and no real impact on my life, that is learning. That's how I practice these emotional intelligence skills. And what emotional intelligence does is it amplifies IQ and knowledge, and it makes you way better. And again, as we go back and look at the studies, and you can read, there's just dozens and dozens of books on emotional intelligence, but the data tells us again and again that people with high EQ often are able to trump people who have a high IQ but a low EQ. So in other words, you might be smarter than me, but I might be more emotionally aware than you, and I will typically outperform you in the workplace because I have a higher EQ. Now, we take a look at EQ in sales. There are particular traits, about 20 to 21 particular traits in sales. Some of them are common to other places, but there's this we call it sales EQ. But there are particular emotional intelligence traits that are decidedly important for sales, where they might not apply somewhere else. And we find that a lot of really great salespeople have a high level of emotional intelligence when they're in sales situations, and sometimes lack those same emotional intelligence traits when they're not in those sales situations. And if you are a business owner and listening to this and you have salespeople, you'll know what I'm talking about. You've got some savants that go out and close every piece of business, but they can't get along with anyone else. And I don't raise my hand and say that my job is to teach people who have high sales EQ how to have good EQ in other places. My role in life is to teach people how to have great EQ in sales situations, so that ultimately they can close more business, they can build your business, and they can enhance their own income.
Hey, Kit, so now I know you had some questions, and I think there's some audience questions.
Yeah, I'll put the audience questions first. I didn't have any questions. What I really wanted to say was, when he was talking about the cultural norms, I could totally relate because I'm from India, and we have a very different way of interacting with people than those in the U.S. Like, here, it's common to see people smiling at each other and talking to like strangers. They find it very comfortable to do that. In India, it's very important that you first forge that trust. Like you said, the courtship period is a lot longer than in other westernized cultures, because you really have to get to know that person, and respect is a big deal in India, because that's almost like the foundation of our culture. So I was just kind of just supplementing what you were saying. That's all.
And and especially when you think about smiling in India, and I'm certainly I'm not an expert on Indian culture, but I work with a lot of Indians, and I'm sensitive to this, that there are certain mannerisms that Indians portray that mean things, and it's important that you're aware of those, so that you don't inadvertently send a message to an Indian that that relays an opportunity to distrust you. Just because you don't mean to do that. You have to, and they're not that hard to understand, but the smiling and what people mean, and when they're open to letting you in, you've just got to be aware of that. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. I think, and that's why I think you really have to research, that country's culture, the norms, what they value, their ethics, their morals, because it's very different. If you go to the United Arab Emirates, for example, it's a lot different there than it is from India. So I think every country, every culture is different, and you really have to study that particular culture before you go and talk to people, because otherwise it's going to be a waste of time, in my opinion.
But when I have a whole group of Indians that I do business with, and the one thing that they absolutely dig, when I make them feel important. When I tell them they do a great job.
Oh, absolutely. It's a big deal with Indians. It's a big deal.
It's the need to feel important is the singularity of human behavior. It is the place where everything that we do across every culture.
That's one commonality. Yes, absolutely. There are a couple of really good questions from the audience. I'll put up this one first. It's from Don Stevens. He says, how do you handle rejection? And do you feel like sometimes you're wasting your time on a certain project? I thought that was a good question, because we've talked about success in sales, but how do you remain motivated when things are not going your way?
So how do you handle rejection? So if I were going to be one of the sales trainers that Dennis talked about earlier, here's what I would say. Well, you just have to let rejection roll off your back and realize that it's business, not personal. So let me give you the real answer. The real answer is I've sold millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of products and services. I have been rejected more times than you can possibly imagine. I despise rejection. I do take it personal. When I put my heart and soul into something and I'm trying to sell it and someone says no to me, it hurts me. It hurts me deeply. And I work hard to avoid rejection just like everybody else in the world does. And I really believe this. I mean, if you're a person that rejection just rolls off your back like water, you're probably a psychopath. So how do you handle it? Well, I think the first thing is to stop trying to fool yourself and to believing that it's business, not personal, because it is personal and it does mean something. And especially if you're a small business person and you're putting your sweat and your tears and your hard work into something, it is absolutely going to slay you when you get told no. So the first thing is acknowledge it. The second thing is let go of perfection. You're just not going to close everything. You're not going to get everything. And so many of us that are so competitive, we want to be perfect. And you just have to teach yourself to let that go. The second thing is to change the meaning of no. A lot of times what I do is I count no's because I get way more no's than yes, so I make a game out of counting my no's. Literally, I'll call people up and go, you're not going to believe this. I got told 60 times no today. It's incredible. And by doing that, it changes the way that it feels to me. And then I think finally, it's not getting yourself involved in low probability opportunities. So, like, how do I know when to let go of a project? Well, Dennis said I don't teach closing skills, and I don't, because most closing problems are a qualifying issue or a prospecting issue. So, in other words, if I don't have a whole lot of projects going on, if I haven't put a lot of stuff in my pipeline, then I'm holding on to a handful of things that I have to close in order to survive. Well, if you are holding on to a handful of things that you have to close in order to survive, you tend to be desperate. And if you tend to be desperate, you tend to reek of desperation. You stink of it. And when you stink of desperation, people aren't going to do business with you. You don't have a closing problem. You've got an emotional intelligence problem because you're unable to manage your own emotions. And this creates something called the universal law of need, which means that the more that you need something, the less likely you are to get it. So that's one problem. A qualifying problem means that you're working on things that sound like good opportunities, but you haven't asked the hard questions to determine whether or not it's something you should be working on. So it feels like rejection, but reality is you didn't take the time up front to disqualify the project, the opportunity, the customer, whatever the case may be. You didn't do that because you weren't doing enough prospecting on the front end, so you're afraid that if you ask really hard qualifying questions that you may scare away a potential sell. So what happens is you get involved in these projects and the person's moving along in the process, but they really don't have any intention to buy, and you wrap yourself up in this warm blanket of, oh my God, they're willing to talk to me. but then you end up frustrated because they just want to see more stuff, or they quit returning your calls, or the process stalls, and that makes you feel like you're being rejected. And then finally, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, you get, some call from, some lame insurance person who doesn't do any research and doesn't understand you. And so you're calling people up that have no trust for you, don't know who you are, you're interrupting their day, and your first move is to make them feel unimportant and as if you don't know anything about them. That's generally going to create a high level of rejection. It works. I mean, if you call enough people, someone's going to do business with you, and there are some people who live in that environment. But it's better that you've got more of a strategy for going about how you open up those doors. I hope that answers the question in a short time frame. I could spend probably all day long teaching you about rejection.
Oh, we have a psychopath here, by the way.
And he's one of us. He's our dream. He's our dream. And he's psycho. Hey,
I think he said that in response to the comment about letting rejection roll off, which he does have a knack for, actually. And I actually try to learn from him on that one.
Well, there's a difference in saying that I let rejection roll off my back and I don't take it personal. And we talked about earlier, drive is, that drive to move forward, that optimism and competitiveness. So I get told no a lot. I get back up again. There's a saying that says, if you can look up, you can get up. It's competitiveness that says, I'm going to keep moving. I have a sign that I carry with me, and it just says next. So when I get rejected, I remind myself that there is a next. I change the meaning of what it is, and that's way different than saying that rejection doesn't affect me, because again, I've trained thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and we tend to, us folks that work in sales and get rejected often, we tend to reflect that outwardly by saying, you just got to let it roll off your back. When people are hearing that, they're thinking, how can I possibly let it roll off my back? They're agonizing over making the next call, or agonizing over asking for the business, or asking for the next step, not realizing that what they really need to internalize is being competitive and learning how to use rejection as a motivator to get up and do it again. That's what all great competitors do. Great competitors lose, but they don't let losing define them. They make losing make them better, and it makes them work harder, and it makes them more determined. And that's a different way of channeling the emotion of rejection, rather than just saying, just roll it off your back, don't take it personally. I don't know how you not do that.
Right. Yeah. I love that, Jeb. Hey, but we've got some questions from the audience, and I want to take those in just one second. But I have one more question for you, and it's about cold calling. And I think cold calling puts the fear in all of us, especially us introverts. Is there a special approach, or is there like a process that may make that whole thing easier to stomach for those of us who just, are literally scared of it?
You're not going to like my answer.
No, I will. Trust me, I will.
The answer is no. The answer is no. I'm going to get on my soapbox, so if you're in the audience, forgive me, but I'm going to get on my soapbox. There are a bunch of people out there in the world that are selling this snake oil that they can somehow make cold calling feel better. That they can take all the rejection. I'd actually read a book recently, and in the first chapter of the book, it said, I will show you how to eliminate rejection from cold calling. The only way to eliminate rejection from cold calling is not cold call. Cold calling is rejection dense. When you call people up and you ask them to set an appointment, do a demo, go to the next step with you, gather information, you are going to get rejected because you're calling someone up and interrupting their day. That's a fact. There is nothing that I can do or say that will make it easier on your emotions. What you can learn to do is be more efficient with your prospecting and more effective. In other words, you can spend less time prospecting, which is the hard part of doing anything. Nobody likes to prospect. Nobody likes it. It sucks, but you got to get over it, because if you're a small business person, you are going to fail if you don't prospect. If you're an entrepreneur, you are going to fail if you don't prospect. If you are a salesperson, you will fail if you don't prospect, because lack of prospecting activity is the number one reason for failure in sales. Number one, always has, always will be. But you can't make it emotionally easier, and you're not going to eliminate rejection. And anybody that tells you that is pandering to your fear, trying to get you to buy their snake oil. And when you hear that, run the other way as fast as you can. What you can do is learn particular techniques for how do you interrupt someone's day so that you can get on and off the phone as fast as possible, or on and off email as fast as possible. And there are particular email techniques that you can ask for what you want and get it. There are ways to segment your marketplace, segment your prospects, understand who you're calling on. I mean, if you're walking around randomly knocking on doors and they're not in your demographic, or they're not in your market, or they're not in the SIC codes that you sell to, well, that's cold calling that's really going to suck, because everybody's going to tell you no. But if you have a list of, say, 3,000 prospects that you know buy your services, but they don't know who you are, or they're not buying from you, and you call them up, formulating a simple opening, getting their attention, telling them why you're calling, asking them for what you want, and giving them a reason to talk to you, gives you the opportunity to further qualify those opportunities and open doors and get in the doors. And if you're in inside sales, move to the next step, which might be a sales presentation or a demo or asking for the business. But that you can learn. And you can learn how to balance your prospecting across social media, across phones, which is the telephone is and always will be, until they come up with some way that you can do it via ESP, your best business tool. It's just gonna be via email. You can learn how to network better, how to generate more referrals. And I think what some of the things you guys talk about, you can learn how to use all these tools to generate more inbound leads, because inbound leads will always be easier to deal with, although salespeople continually screw those up as well. But you can deal with those. And so you can build a process around prospecting. You can develop that that happening. But the one thing that you do control, by the way, this is my sales finger. I just gave everybody the sales finger. This sales finger. This is my sales thumb. I'd show you my sales foot, but it probably wouldn't be right now because I'm barefooted. So. But my sales finger, that I can control. I can control dialing the numbers. I can control on my phone dialing the numbers. One thing I can control is that. And there's not a single human being in the world that is going to make that happen except for you. You have to make that decision. Do you want to do business or not? Do you want to grow your business or not? If you want to do that, then you have to tap into that desire. And the only thing, by the way, we were talking earlier about procrastinating on a phone call. Every time I look at the phone, I won't make it. The only thing that trumps procrastination is your desire. Your desire to win, your desire to sell, your desire to grow your business, your desire to reach your goals. You have to do that first. Then we can teach you everything else. If you're not willing to give the phone your sales finger or your sales thumb, if you're not willing to do that, then nothing's going to make it easier, and all of the charlatans that sell you the snake oil of eliminating rejection are just going to make you spend a whole bunch of money on something that's never going to work for you, because you don't have what it takes to get up every day, that drive, and build your business.
Wow, Jeb, you know what? I'm going to have to watch this show back about 10 times, because you have given so many nuggets of great information that anybody could be a millionaire just by watching the show and putting into action some of the things, even a few of the things that you mentioned here today.
If you keep talking like that, there's a door behind me right here. This is my studio door. I'm not going to be able to walk by. I mean, my head's getting bigger and bigger and bigger as we go along.
Well, you deserve it. You deserve it. Hey, Kit, there were some audience questions.
Yeah, there are a couple of audience questions. I'm not sure how we are doing at the time, Jim.
Well, that's all right. We'll go. Okay. Just bring them up.
Okay.
Bring them up.
A couple of them, let me go find the first one. It was a good one. The question was, when you're meeting with a client, is it important to make the client understand your values? You're talking about the cultural norms and everything. That's when the question popped up. And the question was, is it important that your client understands what your values are and shares those values with you? That was a question. I'm going to find it. Meanwhile, we can answer that.
That's a really good question. So I'm going to answer this in two different ways. So we talked earlier about qualifying prospects or qualifying clients. So most closing problems, most sales process problems, stem from lack of deals and or opportunities in the pipeline and poor qualifying. So when we talk about qualifying, we basically talk about two types of qualifying. There's technical qualifiers. So do they fit your market? Are they big enough so that they're going to buy enough from you to make it worth your time and effort? Do they buy the things that you buy? What's their buying window? All those things. And then there's an engagement qualifier. So what are their business challenges? What are their values? Will they value you? Who's buying? How do they buy? Those type of things. So one of those qualifiers, what we call a fit qualifier, is do they fit you? And fit you could be a value thing. Fit you could be what they buy kind of thing. And you're always looking at fit, because it doesn't do you any good as a business person to go and bring in customers that don't fit your business. If they don't fit you, and if it's a values thing, like I have a values thing, we talked earlier, I don't do sales training out of a box. One of the things that I value very much is being able to get in and understand an organization, a company, get to know them at the base level. For example, typically when I engage a company, I'm going to go out in the field with their salespeople and I'm going to go ride. Sometimes I have a client just recently that they were expressing to me how hard they were having selling a particular product. I went out, learned about the product, and went on the street and actually went out and sold their product. And I actually got pretty successful at selling their product, and I was able to go back to them and say, here's my success in selling your product. Here are the things that I would change about this, so I can go experiment that. When I have a customer that says, oh, no, we don't need you to do that. We just want you to come in and teach our people, I typically shy away from those, because one of my values is that I want to be able to walk away from a company and know and believe and feel that I actually changed something, that I had an impact there, that people value me for the knowledge that I brought to them and the way that I trained them. So for me, if I find that I don't have that happening, I tend to walk away from those deals. And your business, you've got to look at the same thing. If you're a salesperson and you work for a company that's a premium brand, for example, you value charging more because you give more, and you're dealing with a group of clients or a client that says, all I really care about is the lowest price possible, and you pursue that deal, you're just creating a problem for yourself down the road, because you're bringing someone in that has a different value system than you. Now that's qualifying, but that's a different question. The question is, should I make my client aware of my values? Well, some of that will happen naturally through your marketing efforts, through the things that you publish, through your content, through what you do on social media. Dennis is showing me Google Plus and opening me up to the world of Google Plus. But, Dennis, we talked about how, that authenticity and who you are is such a big deal on Google Plus because of the type of community it is. Some of your values will naturally come through, and because of that, you will attract people into your circle that share those same values. Those will become your natural prospects. However, that still doesn't answer the question. Should I make my clients aware of my values? And this is the hard truth, the brutal truth that you probably don't want to hear, and that is this. Your clients, your prospects, your customers buy for their reasons, not yours. Right. Your goal, once you get into that sales process, is to understand their reasons for buying and then bridge to your value, articulating your value in their words, not your words. When you are making people aware of your values, it's called pitching, and all pitching does is make you look like everyone else and make your client wish that they hadn't spent any time with you. And when that happens, they typically walk away from you, very similar to the conversation we had earlier about the insurance person that called you up and didn't know anything about you. It was repelling to you. Don't call me ever again. Should I make my clients aware of my values? No. You should listen to your clients, understand their values, and bridge from their values to your product in a way that makes them understand that you get them and that you get their problems. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, wow, Jeb. No, you know what? I am blown away. So we have to wrap up now. We're getting close to the end, but I'd like to go through everyone on the panel, have them maybe talk about, wow, what did you get out of today's episode? Right, just a brief nugget of what you got out of today's episode. That would be awesome. And we'll start with Carolyn.
Always first on the film strip, eh?
Yes. Always.
Well, it's certainly been a really interesting conversation. I love love hearing your stories, Jeb, and hearing all the fantastic tips that you have for people. You know, what I like most about talking with your brand of sales trainer, and I've met one or two similar with a similar kind of philosophy. It's that it feels so natural. Mm-hmm. It feels so like being a decent human being. It doesn't feel salesy. It doesn't feel like you're trying to push anything when you do that. It's the way to do it that feels like a conversation and feels like we're just two people talking about a product or a service. And that's the essentials of it. And by making someone feel important and making someone feel like a part of the process, which is what we talk a lot about here on Google Plus and what I talk about on my blog, that makes them feel involved and makes them more likely to buy. So I think it's great stuff that you're talking here.
Well, Carolyn, you've got it. Salespeople, especially new salespeople, always ask me, what should I say? And I always respond, you're asking the wrong question. The question you should be asking is, what do you ask? Because sales is not an interrogation; it's a conversation. And so it's not a pitch. It's engaging people, and it should feel natural. It should be natural to you if you're doing those things, and that's what makes sales fun. It makes it alive, and it makes it work for you. You're not going to close everybody, but at least you can walk away from sales conversations feeling like all of your dignity is still intact.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, Dennis. Hey, Dennis, I'm throwing it over to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Microphone today. It's amazing to me, Jeb. It doesn't matter how many hours I've spent listening to you, how many times I read through your books. I learn something every time. One of the things that resonated the most for me, it may seem ironic, but is your talk about sales crack. I mean, when you're selling the way that you train, it really is. It's a pleasure for the person who buys from you, and it's a pleasure for you as a salesperson when you're finally able to help them, and it literally is addicting. Sales crack. I loved that term. I love that everybody in the audience turned it into a hashtag. Great stuff. Thank you so much for being on here, and I hope to get you more involved here on the Plus.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and we definitely want you to come back on our show. So, hey, Kristen, what resonated the most with you?
Everything. Yeah. I'm like with everybody that's in our dream audience. I'm definitely going to be watching this over again and taking notes. Yeah. This was just, I'm with you too when you said that anyone could come on here and just take what you are saying, apply it, and be successful. And thank you so much for coming. This is amazing. Like every single second was just like, wow, I want to write that down. I want to write that down.
Thank God for recording, right?
Yeah.
Seriously, I'm not going to be able to get through the door, but thank you.
We love it. Hey, Kit, what resonated the most with you?
Haha, I've been taking notes already, so I have a whole page of it here. So I'm ahead of the curve here. But I think this is arguably the most information-rich episode that we've had on Get Busy. I mean, there's absolutely no question about it. And what I really like is traditionally sales is thought of as this mindless cold calling, no strategy, no relationship kind of field. So you're like, every time you ask somebody, oh, what do you do? And it's like, I'm in sales. Like, oh, okay. You're in sales, so I don't like you. But you have kind of busted that myth and proven that the only way to be successful in the long term is to treat it like a relationship, to listen, to utilize emotional intelligence and research and all the other wonderful pearls of wisdom that he threw at us, which I have a whole page of them. So I think that totally kind of transformed my vision of sales, and I think I have a newfound respect. for the profession of sales. So thank you so much for being on Get Busy. And Dennis, thank you so much for introducing us to Jeb. I think you deserve equal amount of applause for that. And of course, the Dream Team, Dream Audience, thank you so much for always, being with us and unconditionally supporting us. Thank you.
Hey, Jeb, so I want to ask, how can people find you, and what are some of the things that you have on your plate right now that'll be interesting to our audience?
So I'll give you a couple of things. So if you like what you hear, I mean, if you want to hear my voice, Dennis will tell you this. You can go find my my podcast. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, and a dozen other podcast aggregators. And you just search for Sales Gravy and my name, Jeb Blount. So you've got that. You can find me on Google Plus, and so put me in your circle. You can find me on Twitter @SalesGravy is my handle. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me on Facebook. A little bit warning about Facebook. I tend to post where I'm going. Sometimes that'll make you dizzy because last year I think I spent almost 300 days on the road. So
oh my God.
I will, I might post the occasional picture of food, and I tease people that I post cat videos, but I really don't. So you can find me there, and of course you can find me at salesgravy.com. And I'll give you my email address if you want to get in touch with me. This is warning all you spammers. Trust me, everybody's spamming me, so keep on if you like to. But if you really want to get through, an easy way is Jeb, J-E-B, @salesgravy.com, and you can catch me there, and however you want to connect. And the next big project that we're working on is a project called Fanatical Prospecting. We should have the book out in the fall. We'll have website up here shortly, and we're going to have an entire online learning suite that'll allow you to go in at your own leisure and build and hone your prospecting skills, either as an individual contributor or an entrepreneur or a small or medium-sized business.
Wow. Amazing. Well, Jeb, I certainly hope that you'll come back and visit us on Get Busy. This has been an amazing episode. Like Kit said, it's been chock full of so much information that I'm just going to have to go back and replay it over and over and over again and just absorb some of the amazing knowledge that you imparted on us today. So I can't thank you enough. Can't thank you, Dennis, enough for bringing this guy to our attention and bringing him on our show. We're happy that this was your first HOA ever, right?
That's right, first one.
Debuted on Get Busy, so that's amazing. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dream Audience. Looking forward to next week's show where we're having Don Stevens, who's been really active in the audience today. He's actually going to be our guest next week, and we're super looking forward to that. Another amazing episode of Get Busy. Thank you, guys, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week right here.